Hello, and thank you for joining us to discuss carrier digitization and the current state of play for ocean freight technology. This is a particularly well-timed topic, with the adoption of online quoting tools becoming ubiquitous among global carriers, and for the market, perhaps more options than ever before to secure an instant rate. So I am therefore very excited to be joined today in speaking about this with Mike Angelis. Mike is the Senior Vice President for Global Carrier Data Strategy and Digitization here at CargoWise, and I know has many thoughts to share with us. Mike, hello and welcome. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Jay. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Let's start by going back 12 months, and the global pandemic hit during the 2020 Chinese New Year. At the time, there was a level of uncertainty around production and capacity and whether or not carriers would pull back capacity in response to production changing. That soon then developed into even greater uncertainty as to whether or not production would return post-Chinese New Year. Can you talk us through what happened next and most notably what changes emerged once production did come back online?
Absolutely, Jay. I can talk us through that. So during a normal year, there's a tremendous amount of uncertainty as to what production is going to happen, not happen, and what the carriers may do in terms of how much capacity they may pull out of the market in order to accommodate that. So what unfortunately happened in 2020 is we had the pandemic hit in Asia, which caused a number of ripple effects within the Asia market itself. So production went down as lockdowns happened. We had, production halt. We had operations in ports and terminals slow down. Trucking capacity evaporated. So now we've got a situation where, the exports that would normally go out of Asia, although reduced in capacity at that point, pretty much trickled to nothing. So now any exports that were sort of underway are piling up on the terminals in Asia. Any imports that are coming off of vessels are also starting to pile up. And now you've got a situation where, because of congestion and because of lack of drivers, now you're ending up with a highly congested port, lower production, which means, okay, less exports would be going out, but still in the rest of the world, because the pandemic had not hit yet, markets such as Europe, you ended up with a situation where they're expecting these as imports and waiting for them to go and put goods on store shelves, to have raw materials in factories. So these ripple effects in Asia then, of course, had effects elsewhere. So what we saw was carriers wanting to have the capacity or have the vessels sail to the import markets, but were unable to really get the vessels moving because of the high levels of congestion in the terminals in Asia.
Got it. So and what impact did that have for the freight rate market at the time?
In terms of the impacts on the freight rates, the congestion in Asia had a number of effects. One of them was a lack of empty equipment. This can impact freight rates because, of course, there's still a demand for, again, imports elsewhere in the world from Asia. So there were still goods to be shipped. And, the unavailability of equipment is one factor in terms of demand, where you would see a corresponding rate or price increase due to that demand. And, another contributing factor would be the fact that you had vessels that were either sailing light or unable to discharge. And because of this as well, you start to get capacity issues where you were unable to take the containers that are ready for export that are needed elsewhere in the world from the Asia market to, say, the US or to Europe. And because of that pent-up demand, you also have a corresponding effect on rates. So as the demand to get containers on vessels, whether they're already filled or whether they're yet to be filled, that, of course, causes freight rates to go up. And we saw both impacts on freight rates from the fact that there was congestion, therefore there was a lack of empty equipment to fill, and there was therefore also issues with getting containers onto ships. And as a result of that, of course, freight rates would, of course, go up. Uncertainty was still pretty high at the time.
I see. So from the production changes to the relative shifts in supply and demand, and then the ongoing issues around capacity. Let's now fast forward 12 months, and can you describe for us what the current landscape looks like for ocean freight in 2021 today?
I can. Thank you, Jay. So today, what we're seeing is some still lingering impacts from what happened in 2020. So, equipment is still scarce in certain areas of the world, and it's plentiful in others. And in a good year, this imbalance is already there. What we've seen is that imbalance compounded by the effects of COVID and all of the ripple effects that we've spoken about earlier in the conversation. So what you're seeing nowadays is still a strong demand for getting containers on vessels, full containers, still a strong demand for getting empty equipment, depending again on the geography and where the imbalances are. So freight rates are continuing to be high, and the expectations are that they may remain there until some of these COVID impacts start to ease.
So demand is strong, yet the lack of empty equipment and schedule reliability remain as major issues for global shipping. And of course, freight rates are historically high. Do you have any views as to the outlook and what is the new normal is next or moving forward?
In 2021, what we're continuing to see is a focus on the carrier side, the 3PL, freight forwarder side, in serving their customers digitally and serving their customers both in an accurate, complete, and timely fashion. And what we mean by that is being able to give the customer something that they know they can work with here and now, being accurate, know that they won't have to come back and ask, follow-up questions on, and was this included, was this not included in terms of the completeness. And then the key here is the timeliness. So what I'm expecting to continue to see here in 2021 are focus, on solutions for addressing the how do I serve my customers in this accurate, complete, timely fashion digitally, given all of the shifts in workforce and the shifts in being able to deal with customers, face to face, negotiate face to face. So these are realities and continued realities, most likely even past 2021, as the workforces shift, as office dynamics change, as your ability to hop on a plane and negotiate something halfway across the world in person. Because these have all changed, I think the methodology for being able to serve customers, or how you need to be able to serve customers, has of course had a significant change as well. So any investments or continued investments in digital solutions that allow you to serve your customers better, whether that is, again, by providing them more insights, by providing them more timely access, be that to place a booking, be that to receive a freight rate, and being able to act on that freight rate and being able to have certainty that that offer, again, includes everything that they need and all of the certainty that they need. These are going to be and remain most likely, for the foreseeable future, really competitive advantages that all of the freight forwarders, 3PLs, and carriers are going to need to harness, these solutions and what they provide in order to remain competitive in the market, given that landscape.
Do you have a view as to the role of visibility and reliability and what that means for forwarders and carriers in today's market?
Yes, given the impacts and factors that we saw in play in 2020, continuing in 2021, really visibility will be even more key, to being competitive in the market than it has in the past. And what I mean by this is whether it's, where is the vessel, that has my cargo on it? What is the new estimated time of arrival? Has it arrived? These are all, visibility questions as to, the current state of my shipment. Once it's off the vessel, we're looking at, well, okay, so has the container, left the terminal? Is it ready to be picked up from the terminal? If it's been, picked up, is it en route? Has it arrived at my warehouse? Has it been unloaded? Has the empty container been returned? All of these, of course, were important prior to 2020, 2021. But what we're seeing now is really, given the increases in uncertainty, given the knock-on effects on vessel reliability, given the impacts on being able to secure empty equipment, the demand actually to make sure that once equipment, is unloaded, that it gets back to where it needs to go in a timely manner so that it becomes available for someone else. These are all, positively impacted by having, increased visibility. And the data that underpins all of that visibility needs to be shared, again, in an accurate, complete, and timely fashion. So what we're seeing are solutions that are able to provide data, in a timely and accurate fashion, are becoming much more important to have, in your suite of solutions, and being able to then send that information further downstream to your customers is, of course, also extremely important. So it's, helping you become more efficient and more productive operationally, as well as it's supporting your customer experience and being able to give your customers the certainty that they at least know the status of their shipment and can be able to plan on any contingencies accordingly.
Right. So, Mike, I think it's fair to say that the appetite for digitization is continuing, or for that matter, increasing. Is the market at a tipping point with regards to the way that carriers and forwarders will serve their customers moving forward from here? And is it a win-win for both sides?
So digitization has been, a theme and has been worked on, for well over a decade, in a very focused manner, at least on the ocean shipping side. And what we're seeing now is an acceleration of what I think was already there. So whether we call it a tipping point, the tipping point might actually be if you were holding off, if you had, any doubts as to whether you wanted or were able to make the changes required. Really, your ability to hold out ceased last year. So in 2020, given the market conditions and given the competitive, landscape, really a carrier, a 3PL, a forwarder who's looking to remain competitive and serve their customers properly has to digitize, has to be able to not only gain the efficiencies from being able to leverage digital technologies for their own operations, but being able to serve their customers and give them the customer experience required. Really, the tipping point is you can't hold off on this any longer, or you risk having a competitive disadvantage from doing so.
So ingesting the rates and instantly translating them from a buy rate to a sell rate has a myriad of benefits, and notably speed. For the forwarders and 3PLs, this must be a giant leap forward, or is this a giant leap forward in terms of efficiency and productivity gains?
It can be. So taking a buy rate from, say, a supplier or a carrier and translating that into a sell rate is nothing new. But what we're starting to see, and what I believe we'll continue to see, is an increased demand to do that in, again, an accurate and timely manner. So, accuracy is going to help both with your own, efficiency operations on producing accurate invoices, but also on the flip side, on your customers' satisfaction and meeting your customers' expectations. Because of course they're expecting to get something accurate and timely, and they expect that your invoice quality is going to be as high as possible. So what that means is, if you're receiving things on spreadsheets and in emails, there is an accuracy and, a timeliness impact to that. And it always has been, because you have to handle manual rekeying. Something sits in an inbox from Friday to Monday, doesn't get out until Monday afternoon. These are all contributing factors to, not only less efficiency, but a lower level of satisfaction for your customers. And what we're seeing here in 2020 and 2021 is really speed and accuracy are key. You need to be able to get something accurate in the hands of your customer as quickly as possible, or else someone else will. And in a highly competitive, market like it's been, especially given all of the challenges for the last, year and a half, is really those who have these technologies, or those who, quickly accelerate their adoption of such technologies, are going to have and continue to have a competitive advantage given the current market conditions.
And then I suppose beyond rates, the other benefit is that this provides a level of two-way commitment as well, right? So it gives a forwarder the level of confidence that they need with real-time information to be able to deliver on a promise to their customer, or to be able to serve a customer who is asking them about next week's vessel, or about the equipment or the space on the vessel and what that's going to cost them. Is that fair to say?
Yes. In 2020 and now continuing in 2021, we see solutions that have either already been introduced to the market or have been slow to be introduced, have a tremendous amount of pickup. And more specifically, as you stated, solutions that look at really two areas: the impacts on equipment availability, and the impacts last year and continued this year on the space on the vessels, the availability of space, means that these are two dimensions that are extremely important. So I can, provide a rate or an offer to you, and it can be accurate and complete and timely. But if the uncertainty is still there as to whether or not you'll actually serve me, in the intended fashion, meaning, am I going to get the empty equipment timely? Am I going to get the space on the vessel, or am I going to have to wait for weeks with that container on the terminal where it's needed at destination on a certain date? These, factors have meant that solutions that address them, all or in part, have had a larger increase in adoption than any other solutions in that space. So if I'm able to, as either a carrier and or a 3PL freight forwarder, offer the respective customer in that equation certainty, then I think that can even trump things like price. And we saw that again with the dramatic increases in freight rates, that the demand for some of that certainty, to be able to say, yes, I can have equipment, and yes, I will get my container on the vessel as expected, are quite valuable downstream. So they're quite valuable to the 3PL freight forwarder, and of course to the customers of 3PLs and freight forwarders. So what we saw is higher levels of adoption on solutions that catered to that need.
I guess the answer to this may be multidimensional, but implementing this isn't easy to do, is it?
No. So not only do you have challenges operationally, but then you have to be able to serve, the underlying customer digitally, to really be able to meet the challenges and demands in the current market. So what that means is, from an operational standpoint, as a carrier, can you provide the empty equipment if you're providing, any sort of certainty or guarantee towards your customer? And do you have the space in the vessel if you're going to provide that commitment? So these are very, very operational, questions for the carrier to ask themselves, to say, can I come with my side of the bargain, so to speak? On the 3PL freight forwarder side, of course, if you're going to get access to this container, do you have the goods in hand to fill that container with? Are you going to return it for the intended vessel? Or is there uncertainty as to whether it's going to be ready in time? When you marry these two together from an operational standpoint, you can say, well, that's really almost always been there. It's just the pressures and the challenges of 2020, 2021 have made it more important to be able to move those, two sides of the operations closer together. Then if you look on how to serve customers, be that a carrier serving the 3PL and freight forwarder, or the 3PL freight forwarder serving their end customer, being able to do that accurately and timely means, and given the market conditions of remote working, less individuals in offices, less face-to-face interactions, you have a need for solutions to be able to make that as quick and seamless as possible, that interaction between yourself and your end customer. So really digital solutions have been, increasing in demand and in supply, so to speak, in 2020, moving into 2021, where you're seeing a accelerated need for these types of solutions, as well as an accelerated adoption, which is many times a key challenge. But given the market conditions, given the remote working, given the less face-to-face interactions, we are seeing all of these pieces come together in terms of, carriers and 3PLs, freight forwarders being able to agree and being able to reap the benefits for having these equipment and space on vessels guarantees, and being able to translate that into, more efficiency for themselves. And on the flip side, a higher level of customer satisfaction for the end customer.
You've raised some really good points there, Mike. Let's discuss APIs, and I know the topic of API connectivity comes up a lot in the market. So two questions. One, is API connectivity a challenge, and is this a common issue that needs to be overcome by many? And two, I guess, without a homogeneous level of API connectivity across carriers, does that then provide an opportunity for a forwarder who can get that right to really differentiate themselves?
So traditionally speaking, when we're transferring data on the ocean container shipping side of things, it's really been driven by electronic data interchange, or EDI, which is great for sending large batches of information, very consistently. What we're seeing is, with a lot of the new solutions coming out in the market, that really there's a demand to move away from that, which EDI, transfer of data, which again serves a large purpose and will continue to do so. But really, you need something a bit more flexible, and again, something that supports that timeliness aspect. So APIs, or application programming interfaces, allow for much more of a timely two-way communication than, say, the traditional EDI methodology allows. So the flexibility there is key in order to handle certain transactions, transactions where you want to get a request and reply to that request quickly with information. That information can be, yes, I have equipment. Yes, I have space on the vessel. Yes, here is your rate offer. This technology supports those transactions a lot better than the traditional ways of doing so. So that being said, carriers and 3PLs, freight forwarders who can harness the benefits from using this methodology can, have it support their solutions that are trying to deliver those, freight rates, those offers to customers out in the market. And I think, we will see a continued increase in the usage of APIs. But however, I don't necessarily believe this year you're going to see APIs take over, the entire landscape of messaging. They serve a purpose, and they serve a purpose well. I think there'll be increasing number of use cases for that, and an increasing number of solutions that will have that technology underpin what they're trying to achieve with customers. So that being said, the 3PLs, forwarders, carriers who are able to have solutions leveraging this type of technology will most likely see increases in their market share, increases in their profitability. So, the focus will be on, if you already have these in place, then, how do you ensure that the adoption is there from the customers on these solutions? If you don't, how do you ensure that you can leverage these APIs and new solutions that are coming out based on them? So if you were looking in the market to be able to compete, given the market conditions last year or this year, I think you're going to have a renewed focus on solutions and methodologies that support that, very timely ability to serve your customers.
Mike, this has been a incredibly insightful and interesting conversation, so thank you. I think we can probably wrap it up there. But before we do you have any parting thoughts or comments you'd like to share for any forwarders or 3PLs who are watching this and maybe seeing these trends or experiencing these accelerations and these changes firsthand and wondering where can I start or how can I best ensure that I'm as up to pace as I can be for everything that's coming ahead of me?
Absolutely. I think what 3PLs and freight forwarders should really be doing at this point, if they haven't started already, is look to see what are the core operations that really allow them to compete given the market conditions, and allow them to potentially even differentiate themselves. So where in prior years, the focus may have been on being able to serve customers in multiple ways. One of those would be physical, face-to-face interaction, face-to-face negotiations. I think that freight forwarders and 3PLs should be looking at this as potentially a new normal for the market. And how can you leverage digital technologies and solutions that support your ability to compete in the current market, from both the impacts of last year and I think the fact that it's accelerated and will continue to accelerate this year and into the future, is really take a look to see, are your processes manual? Do you have the systems that are able to support the interactions with your customers that are going to be needed to remain competitive? And if the answer to these is, no, take a look out in the market, see what is there, see what not only can support your activities with a remote workforce, with being able to have, demand to have less manual transactions involved, as well as your ability to serve customers digitally, and timely. So these are factors that, allow you to say, what do I currently have? Where do I need to be to remain competitive? And really look towards solutions that have, the track record to be able to provide these capabilities to yourself.
Mike, I think this has been a time well spent. So thank you for your time and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you, Jay. It's been a pleasure.